And action. Welcome to every weekly episode 156 and take 110. Now, in this week, we do have a visitor from João Ferreira from Beezy talk about his recent effort related on writing one blog post every single day during February, so 28 blog posts in a month, because clever to, by the way, big February. So that was smart.
Nothing like a compliment. You've done this awesome work, but you picked the shortest month. Come on.
Sorry.
We can do better than that.
We can do better than that. That was actually really cool. So, and a lot of different blog posts across the different Microsoft 365 platform, including Windows, because he's an MVP not only in Office Dev, but he's also a Windows insider and writes about the Windows 11 as well. So really, really cool stuff. We talk about that and his career and what he's doing and his feelings around the Microsoft 365 platform as well, because he is technical lead at Beezy. So really, really cool stuff. But let's actually jump on that interview right away, and then we'll do the articles after that. So welcome, João Ferreira from, well, I'm not going to tell where you're actually from. So welcome for joining us on the PnP Weekly episode 156. Thank you, Waldek, for double checking the number as well. Now, we actually, before we started recording, we realized that you've been in the show before. Well, actually, we remembered that, but that was episode 18, and it's more than, what was it now? More than 3.5 years ago or something like that.
Yeah.
Which is pretty wild, actually. Yes, time flies. But João, can you do a quick intro? Who you are and what do you do for a living?
Yeah, so I'm João Ferreira. I'm from Portugal. Currently, I work at Beezy as a technical lead, and I'm working mainly with the R&D department, always looking for new things to bring to the product, playing with cool stuff like Viva and all the latest things related with Microsoft 365 and Microsoft Teams. And after being in the episode 18, I became a Microsoft development MVP. And I've been an MVP
that had a
since
positive
then.
impact then, visiting on
Yeah,
the show.
it looks like. It looks like, yeah. So yeah, I'm still an Office development MVP, and lately I've been publishing books about Microsoft lists and Microsoft Teams, and I also have a blog where I write about everything related with SharePoint, Teams, Microsoft lists, and also I have a separate blog where I write about Windows, as I'm also an Windows Insider MVP. And that's who I am and what I do related with Microsoft.
Yeah. Now before we go to the blog and the things what you've done, so João did a absolutely brilliant 28 days blogging in February, but that's a teaser. Before we go there, so I wanted to actually
commercial break.
Commercial break. Almost. Can you elaborate about a bit what Beezy actually does and what does it mean that you are a technical lead over there?
So putting it in simple terms, Beezy has intranet in a box solution. So we have a solution that works on top of SharePoint that aims to simplify and streamline the communication and collaboration process on top of Microsoft 365. And my role is related with what we can do to the product to take advantage of all the good things that Microsoft is being releasing. So we are not only focused on what SharePoint provides and what we do inside of SharePoint, but we are also looking around to the ecosystem and see what else can we bring to the product that leverages other things that Microsoft does, so we can add more value to Microsoft 365 as a whole.
Yeah, which is always the better way of approaching things. So thinking how to extend the things rather than, let's say, bending the rules too much. We're building, because we've been seeing that at some point, but more and more actually, I think our partner ecosystem is understanding the add-on capabilities and way of doing things.
Yeah, I was for a brief moment of my professional life trying to bend the rules But
Who wasn't?
I learned
Yes, that's true. Good
I
point.
learned the hard way that using
Yeah.
the DOM as an API was not good at all,
Yeah.
neither for me or for customers. So I think that the right way of doing it is to follow what Microsoft is doing, try to extend it. Sometimes I find really cool stuff that are possible to do, but well, they are not documented. It's a risk, so let's forget about them and see what happens in the future.
Yep.
And when you look around for new things to add or extend, how do you go about it? Like, where do you find them? Is it like you dive straight into the code, or do you have other ways to look around in the product?
Well, it depends on what we are working on, but usually the DevTools of any browser, it's our best friend. So we are always looking under the hood and try to understand how things work. We look a lot to the network tab, not just to the DOM, and that's one of the things that we do. But it's just to understand a bit better how things work. But we always try to implement things that are fully supported. So even if we find something, we try to look into the documentation to see if things are properly documented. If not, we try to understand if there's a plan in the roadmap or not for something like that to be released. Otherwise, we just try to find another route. Where we dive into the Microsoft graph and to the endless endpoints that are available to see if we can get the same information. But yeah, that's basically what the R&D team do and how we work.
Let me put you a little bit on the spot. If there's one thing that we could offer at Microsoft to offer you more abilities to extend, like an API or extension point, what would it be?
Hide the SharePoint top header completely by default.
Oh, you mean
That would be
the
my
whole suite navigation? So, or just the SharePoint header?
The SharePoint header, yeah.
Okay. So not the suite, not the
yeah.
top level navigation, but actually the one level lower. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Include a flag in the web property and allow us to hide it completely, because sometimes what we are trying to accomplish, and this is not just related with Beezy, but also with other solutions where I worked in the past, and other discussions related with this that I had with other members of the PnP open source community. We have solutions that provide similar functionality to what SharePoint does in that area, but we want to extend it further.
Right.
And Microsoft has the possibility for us to extend it with the application customizer. But then you end up with two separate bars where you have to hide it using CSS, but that's not the right way of doing it. And you see content jumping up and down, so it's a bit tricky. That would be the number one thing in my list.
Okay, cool.
Now, related on the new development, just out of curiosity, we're curious always on what people are doing and what they're perceiving or seeing in the platform. Is the Viva Connection side of the story? Is that something what Beezy is also doing, or are you investigating that as part of the engagement?
Yeah,
any thoughts on? Is it interesting? Is it cool? Is the desktop mobile? Any thoughts on that? So, and we are recording. We're putting this online. So.
it's everything.
The best thing since sliced bread.
we are investigating and testing everything. So we are looking into ACEs and custom ACEs, but we are also looking into global navigation, news sites, news links, all that kind of things that Viva aggregates. We are looking into those things, and we are investigating how we can leverage those to better make use of them with the product and with Microsoft 365. We are looking into Viva Connections desktop, Teams, and mobile, and all of them have the same importance for us.
Yeah. Cool.
You mentioned community that you engage with folks about things like the do's and don'ts, the patterns, and so forth and so on. What areas do you engage with, right? Because it's pretty broad. Like it's everything from community calls to social to forums to open source. Are there any particular areas in which you're active or you'd like to be more active?
Well, the PnP community mainly. I'm mainly focused on the code area for web parts, extensions, list formatting. I often have conversations with another MVP, João Mendes, that does fantastic things and share them in the GitHub repos of the community. But that's where I'm mainly focused. I'm not contributing as much as I would like to because I've been super busy doing other things. But yeah, that's mainly there. I wish I would contribute more on the forums, but that's actually not one of the places where I'm at right now.
And how do you experience like the tooling? Because you mentioned samples, right? Like, how do you experience that in context of your work? Is it helpful? Do you wish there would be something else different, more or less? Any thoughts on that?
It's super helpful. One thing that I wish it could exist was a central repo with all the STPKG files, so we can simply get them installed. Something like the SharePoint lookbook, but with a new template where you can install the samples from the community automatically. You choose what are the samples that you want to install, and boom, it happens. Because sometimes I just want to test the sample. I can easily check the code online or download the repo, but then installing all the modules, checking the correct version of Node, compiling it, deploying it, it's a lot of time. And if I can install it directly without doing all of that, that would be awesome.
That's good feedback. It's at the same time, it's a bit risky model because then customers would be able to just download stuff and put it in their tenant, and then quite often what happens, you would know to be careful, but not everybody would know to be careful about those things. So there's a potential liability issues over there as well. But anyway, so now coming back on something, we mentioned the 28 days of blocking. So you did this kind of an exercise in February. Can you talk about a bit on that? So why did you do that, and what was actually covered?
So this year marks the 10th anniversary of my blog, and I started in January with context where I offered 10 of my books during 10 days. And after that, I thought, well, what I could do next to celebrate the 10th anniversary, because I never thought that I would be able to keep this blog for 10 years. I started it back when I was in college, so it's good that it's still alive. And then I came up with the idea of writing one blog post every day of the month. So I challenged myself to do that. I woke up 1 hour early every single day of the month to write the blog post, to post it before I start working, and I was able to accomplish that. But the last ones were super hard. It was not easy to keep up with this challenge.
How did you go about, like, because you mentioned already, like, you carved out additional hour to have the time, but where did you get the topics from, the ideas?
Well, I have a to-do list with more than 100 ideas. So
easy. So now it's going to be the 100 days of
no. I will not do that.
No commitments.
Over the past 2 years, I wrote 3 books, 2 about Microsoft Teams and 1 about Microsoft Lists. And during this time, I was not blogging that much. But for every post that I wanted to write, and I didn't have time back then because I was writing the books, I added that topic to a to-do list, and it has now, let me just check, but I think it's more than 100. Yeah, more than 100 titles for possible posts. Not all of them will happen, but this is where it came from. So I've defined the plan. I looked for the posts that I had here, and I added with a due date to my to-do list. So in the end, I got a calendar that I had in my iPhone. So there was no way for me to miss or forget about the posts and about the deadlines.
Yeah, but it still requires a lot of work and commitment of making that happen. So just, I have to ask, did you write 2 of them at this one day, or was it always a 1 per day advance? Or
on Fridays, and because at Beezy we work one extra hour a day, and then we have a free Friday afternoon. I always try to write at least 1. So in the weekend, I didn't have to worry about it, but it was mainly on Sundays that I had the post prepared already. On Saturdays, I was still writing the Saturday one.
As we're recording that, it's March. If you look back at February, how do you, what is the impact of your work? Have you seen significant spike in the views of your blog posts, comments, kudos? What was the aftermath of your work?
It's still early to understand what was the impact. One thing that I noticed was the number of followers on Twitter that increased a lot. Number of visits in the blogs. It's early to understand because things are still being indexed by Google, and most of the traffic it's organic. It's kind of hard to know, but there was always that spike after the post being published, and that was something that only happened during February. Now it's not happening. So it's the number of daily views decreased a bit, but in the future, I don't know. Well, if the posts are in fact useful, they might bring more people in the future.
Can you talk about a bit on the different topics? I'm scanning the list of things. But what exactly? Good examples of things what you covered on the.
So. Just to give more context about the blog and about what you will find in here, I started the blog 10 years ago when I was still thinking about being a mobile developer and building super cool apps for Android, and way before meeting SharePoint. And back then, I had handsontech.net, and that was the main repository. I was writing exclusively in Portuguese, but then I started working with Microsoft, and I met SharePoint in 2012, and I started writing about SharePoint as well, but then came Teams, lists, and whatever, and I decided to create separate blogs inside the same instance, and I ended up with 4 different blogs. So you will find different brandings and different topics under the same domain hands-on tech, but they are properly separated. So you will find in the SharePoint blog more things related with admin or development of SharePoint, not so much related with the end user things. Then you will also find the Teams blog, but here it is more targeted to the end users. Teams, it's huge, and based on my professional experience, I've been finding that people doesn't know how to use Teams properly. They don't even realize all the possibilities that they have in front of them, and they continue to look at it as a direct replacement of Skype. So my goal here is to help people to take more out of Teams. And I recently well, what was not recently was almost a year ago, but I've created the lists blog, and that is where I've been posting my sample formattings and the PowerShell scripts that allow administrators to create templates and manage lists, and that's a lot of fun. I've been having a lot of fun creating things that in the past required CSOM, JSOM, jQuery, tons of work.
Camel.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Just to set up a project was almost an entire day, and now you start writing JSON and a bit of CSS and HTML, and you end up with complete solutions, and that's really fun, and I think it's the proper way of doing things in the ecosystem. And finally, the original blog, where I archived all the Portuguese posts from another life, and now I write mainly about Windows and generic technology, where I post my IoT projects that I do around the house and stuff like that. So this is what you can find in the blog. Well, it's one blog, but it has all these separate areas properly divided, so
yeah,
people can see and relate what they are interested in, and not a mix of everything together.
Makes perfect sense. And the stuff and the technical examples, by the way, of Microsoft Lists, what you've been doing, for example, the community call last week in the, I need to get the dates, was it 4th? It was 3rd of March, because depending on when people are watching this, the really, really cool stuff. You talked about the fact of Microsoft Lists, for example. What's your thoughts related on the JSON definition and cleaning and clearing the creating these solutions in the Microsoft Lists? It's kind of no code, low code, but really it's code because it's JSON, so it's not really that simple. My personal only concern, it's really cool that you can do on those things, and it really empowers the people. But my only concern is that then what if the end users can actually go and mess it up? Is that a real concern, or is that something what you're seeing in practice? Or in general, how do you feel about the Microsoft Lists and formatting and those capabilities?
Well, they are not easy for the typical end user because it's well, JSON is easy, but when you mix JSON, HTML, CSS, and some other properties that allow you to do things, it becomes a bit harder. It's not super difficult, but the good thing about it is that you will never mess your list by doing something wrong in the formatting. Well, if the formatting is wrong, either you don't save it, or worst case scenario, you don't see anything in the view, but you are always a delete key away from getting everything back with the default layout from Microsoft Lists. And that is great, because the risk of ruining what you have stored in the list is zero, because you will always have access to the original data. There are still a lot of room to improve the way things are done. The UI for the simple formatting is awesome. So if you want to format things with colors, depending on certain values, the interface that List has now, it's awesome. For things that are more complex, well, it requires knowledge of HTML and CSS and JSON. I don't know how other people is building the formatting, but personally, I build things in HTML, and then I try to port it to the JSON, and sometimes things get weird because you lose track of what is the div and what is the span and the location where you are trying to put things. But in the end, when you see the entire thing together, well, it's awesome what is possible to do with this. Go ahead.
Do you have any tips or tricks for folks who want to do it, like debugging tips and tricks, or if you do this, don't do that, or keep in mind X and so forth?
Well,
only one tip, because I think we're running out of time.
I think the one tip is buy the book about hands-on Microsoft lists, right?
Yeah,
With Renee Moderi.
There you go. That is the best tip, obviously.
That best. Yeah, check out the book. There are plenty of examples there from the most basic ones all the way to a weather list formatting that you can put in a SharePoint page, and it will work as a weather web part built with Microsoft Lists and Power Automate. So
that's where it always starts. So,
yeah.
Waldek, what was the first web part you created for SPFX?
The first one.
And what was the first sample which you shared? Yeah,
weather web part. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. Exactly. The only downside nowadays is that Yahoo Weather is no longer available from an API perspective. So
but
getting that information.
Don't we have a weather
MSN
API in
weather.
Microsoft, like Bing API or something?
Yeah. It exists
for weather?
It exists in Power Automate, so you can create a flow that writes the data once a day or twice a day to a list and then read it from there.
Or have an HTTP enabled flow that you can call from the web part, but we're solutionizing already. So
yeah.
It's slippery slope, right?
Now, before we close, and we want to keep this relatively short, and there would be so many questions related on this stuff, but anything interesting, Shao, on your side, what you're going to do in the upcoming weeks, what you've been building on or investigating, if you can talk about it, of course, if
NDA.
not, it's NDA.
There are quite a few things that I'm investigating now at Beezy that are NDA, so I will not be able to reveal those, but I have a few samples that I want to share with the community for lists, for views, view formattings, and I will try to get those in the repository, at least make the PR during March, so other users can take advantage of them as well. Cool. I've been adding screenshots of small things on Twitter about these samples, but I still need to do a bit more work on them.
Yeah, those samples, by the way, are the most viewed samples in the GitHub organization. So there's a lot of views. So it clearly, as the list formatting is available for end users, so basically anybody, and it's so insanely powerful. So people actually use those samples from GitHub. Well, at least they test out the samples from GitHub quite widely. So it's pretty cool. So cool. I guess that sums up to this one. Waldek, anything, any other things from your side?
No, I can ask 20 million things, but like bearing in mind time.
Maybe the last final question: why did you share? Why are you sharing your knowledge free in the blogging and in the GitHub and with the community? Why are you doing this? Because Shao, you know this, that there's some group of people are always like, yeah, but why am I sharing my knowledge for free?
Well, I'm always willing to help others. So if I know something about a certain topic, and if I have the power to share it to help others, why not do it? And I always end up learning a lot more than I share from other people, from people that engage with me through the blog, from the comment section. It's always a good opportunity to learn other things. One article can lead me to 1,000 different topics that were initially related with the article, but then it diverts and that's one of the main reasons why I keep still sharing and posting after 10 years.
And of course, it doesn't reduce the value of what your company is providing, right? Because that's a bit of a different thing. So that's your offerings with SLA and all of that. So it's exactly. It's cool to see that more and more, even the companies are allowing their employees to do this and being active in the community, because for sure, when we do stuff together, everybody benefits for sure.
Exactly.
Cool. But I guess we'll close up for this one. So thank you, Shao, for joining us.
Right,
really cool
thank
discussion.
you for having me again.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Keep on plugging. You are sharing a lot of valuable information for everybody to benefit. So thank you for that. So really cool.
Thank you.
Thank you,
But
Joe.
Guys.
we'll jump
Bye-bye.
to the actual articles this week. So for those who are watching or listening, we'll jump to there. And welcome back. Thank you, João, for great discussion. It's Monday, and I already tried this level of tiredness, and this is bad. Not because of that interview, for sure. It's too late already. It's not. Anyway, so thank you, João, for the great discussion and interview. And next, we'll jump to the actual articles of the day. So not a significant amount of things happening on the Microsoft side of the house. There's some few blog posts here and there, and then, of course, a lot of stuff from the community side. So, but let me share the screen, and we'll start going through the articles of today. So let me share my screen, which is this one in here. So first of all, the first article is from Graham Kent in the SharePoint Community blog. This is a bit of a confusing potentially for some, but this is around the Viva Connections. But behind of the scenes of Viva Connection is actually the SharePoint engine. So that's why this is actually within this blog post or this blog location, which is around. But Graham talked about the managing and expanding your Viva Connection feed to create culture of connectivity, and he really talks about how the feed capabilities in the mobile and in the desktop area in the Viva Connection will work. So what is actually feeding the feed, and how can you control the frequency, the freshness of the feed? Maybe that's the right way of saying that, because of course you want to have fresh content on that feed for sure. Now, if you create content in SharePoint or in Microsoft 365, that is basically getting then surfaced in this feed. That's the really short DR didn't read too long didn't read. Which way? DR, right?
TLDR, too long didn't read.
TLDR. Yeah, exactly. So, but that's basically what's feeding the feed, and that's then generating the feed to be refreshed and relevant. The next article was the SharePoint Roadmap on February 2022.
Exactly. So as every month, Mark Hashman shares summary, and typically he has a guest with whom he talks about recent updates from the past month in SharePoint, I guess.
Yep.
And in this, yeah, exactly. And in this episode, his guest is Raju Nagalinga, to whom he talks about Microsoft Graph connectors, Microsoft Search, and other things. So strongly recommended to watch or listen to if you want to stay up to date on what has changed in SharePoint and OneDrive in February.
In February, indeed, and of course related technologies as well, because this is all getting kind of a tight connected between each other. So there's topics related on OneDrive, Teams, Microsoft Search, like that interview. And call out on other things as well. So things like macOS, OneDrive, sync improvements, and all of that. So there was a significant changes on that side being done in February, which is great stuff as well. But really great summary on that side. Now, the next article is actually about the Las Vegas conference, which is coming in April 5th to 7th. So there's the Microsoft 365 conference coming. That's in less than a month, which is actually pretty cool. In-person conference, which is super strange again. But sign up, please register and go to the Las Vegas. So Scott Hanselman, Jeff Deeper, Charles Lamana, Karu Anakatimo, Dan Holm will be there taking care of some of the keynotes, and then there will be additional set of sessions happening in Las Vegas as well. So all of this blog post really walks through all of the individual sessions from Microsoft Viva, Yammer, and SharePoint and OneDrive lists and related technologies. So a lot of cool stuff on the list for sure.
Yeah, and also if you look at the name, there's a lot of folks who are really well known in community and also experts in their field, right? So we have Catherine Chuaga, we have Natan Hiomi, we have Liz Sundet, Mike Holland has many folks who have been around for a long time, so really experts in their field, which is again like yet another reason to join and listen to them talk.
Yep, absolutely, really cool stuff. The next one was Icombus on the weekly series.
Exactly. So Aika had yet another article from series Learn from the Community. Well, where she interviews visitors, guests, about the apps that they build for teams. And in this episode, she talks to a group of folks. I don't know, about a low-code Q&A bot that they've built.
Yeah, and why it's actually existing, and the learnings related on building those bots as well. So again, exactly. This is really coming on this series from Icon is really about telling those stories. Why are people building this stuff? What's the art of possible? Why would it matter? What does the solution actually achieve as it has been implemented? So really good discussions for sure.
Exactly, and also a great way to learn, because it goes beyond this, like feature list. You can do this, you can do that, yes. And instead it gives you the ability to hear from others. What do they build? Like, what problems did they solve for them, right? So it gives you these real life scenarios as opposed to you can do X.
Yep, absolutely. Great stuff. Now, the next one was in the Microsoft 365 PnP blog. So in our Microsoft 365 platform blog, assigning a building role to a group at resource group scope level using PowerShell scripts from Shushri Shah. And this is basically a script which is operating and doing Azure automation and to manipulate the roles in a group. So basically controlling things in your Azure subscription. Right? Yes.
Correct.
We're doing such a good job this week on prepping this.
Yes.
But
well, it is like these are deep dive topics, and I mean you covered it well, right? It's all about managing access to resource groups and resources, right?
And this is actually once again a really awesome blog post on basically showing individual scenarios as scripts. So fetching the user scope and showing how things are working, the operations, the individual operations, and all of that. So good references for future to go and check out. Now, Mark Rackley had a blog post late last week related on build your first SharePoint adaptive card extension that you'll actually use.
Yes. He wrote an article, exactly as you say. Mark Rackley wrote an article about SharePoint adaptive card extension.
Yeah. But sorry, Waldek.
Go on. Go on.
No. There's also a video where he talks about actually the content in here and basically walks through the development process and what's available. And of course, as it's Mark Rackley, he's always promoting his North American collaboration conference, and that's what this picture is all about in here. But cool video and a 14 minutes related on building that experience. So really running the element generator, building those experiences, adding that to the dashboard, and how it will be then reflected from a UX perspective. So cool stuff for sure. And we're seeing significant uptake on the ACE development, which is really, really cool. Thank you, and Mark, on that one. Now, this one is then from Marcus Miller.
Exactly. So Marcus is back, and he wrote an article about controlling the access to APIs from SharePoint framework, right? So the idea is that you build an API, you're calling an API, and in the API, you want to be able to control who has permissions to access it. So it's not really on a caller, right? Because like sure, it's all JavaScript and you could limit it whatever you want, but it's just a call, right? So at the end of the day, anybody could still call your API, which is exactly why Marcus shows like how would you control that inside the API to truly ensure that only or scenarios or like people or apps that you want to allow to call the API are actually allowed to. And it goes to validating the token, permissions, role, and so forth and so on that are being sent along with a token.
Yep, this is actually a really, really important piece of security checkings for sure. So it's not just that who can execute the web part or put the web part on a page. It's also the fact that if somebody is then hitting the API directly, it has been properly secured from Azure AD perspective, and then secure limitation even more granular level based on the access tokens. So really, really cool stuff. Thank you, Marcus, on that one. Then we had a blog post from Lorian Strent, Microsoft Teams plus Home Assistant plus Craft, take your presence to next level. And that's actually really cool as well. So it talks about the integration and automation of using the Microsoft Craft, the Presence API, and automating that setting of the API with IoT like LED strip in place. And he has a nice video showcasing the automation here as well. So basically, setting the setting in the in Teams, and then based on that, we can then adjust, for example,
And the light is 3 to 1, changing from blue to yellow. There you go.
Okay, exactly. So really cool stuff. But it's actually, these are really cool scenarios because again, then we are not only in the virtual world, but we can do changes in the physical world. And that light indication is a great thing. Actually, for me, it would be really great because every now and then my kid just runs through the room. So it's like, you cannot come now. I'm actually in a meeting. So because I forget about closing or locking the door. The other one from Lorian Straight was keeping up to date with the Microsoft Craft changelog.
Exactly. So the Microsoft Graph team does an awesome job to share with everybody things that change in Graph, new updates, changes, and so forth and so on. And all of these things are exposed through an RSS feed. Now, the cool thing is that because it's RSS feed, you can use that to keep track of what has changed. And Lorian shows in his article how you can build a Power Automate flow to actually get, I believe he gets subscribes to RSS feed and then sends changes to himself via email so that you can get an email digest of the things that have changed.
Yep. Yeah, this is actually really, really cool as well. And the kind of a cool thing here, is it's basically using the HTML as almost like an API. So detecting that what is the style of the HTML. So basically, if it's if it's bold, or if it's bold added, or if it's changed, then it has a different text written. Is it added or is it deprecated? So, but of course, then as the page maybe formatting will be changing at some point, then you would have to do formatting in here. But it's kind of a cool thing.
You do it and it works, right?
Exactly.
You change it. It's not like you need to do a massive change, right? Like you adjust thing and it's there.
Yep, absolutely makes sense. Now, Mark D. Anderson had a blog post in his blog. Dear Microsoft, please fix the search and intelligence enter, which gives us only minimal insight. So basically, request a public written request for Microsoft for improving the search and intelligence center, and especially the insights and intelligence, what's behind the scenes. So basically, really on the usage analytics reports, additional details on that. And this is for sure something, but I know for a fact that we're looking into. But when and how and where will it be exposed? That might be a different discussion. But it's a classic request for sure for administrators and from a governance perspective to understand more detailed how people are using the tenant. Good. Then we had a blog post from Agnes Molnar.
Yes, about multilingual terms that insert. Now, Agnes is one of those folks who have been around for a long time, and she's really extremely knowledgeable about search.
Yeah.
And in this article, she talks about multilingual term sets in search, how they work, how do you set them up so that you get this multilingual experience.
Yep, really cool stuff. And thank you, Agnes, for sharing that. And not a simple topic either. So multilingual term sets and how they're being exposed. So really cool to have clarity on that one for sure. Don Kirkman had a blog post related on developing SPFX solutions using containers introduction. And I know that Don has been helping Hugo Bernier, or they've been partnering related on the sample containers. And what that means is that like we did have Hugo in the show, didn't we? We did.
Yes.
Monday.
Yes.
To talk about the containers for SPF examples. So basically, and we've been having this in the community calls as well, where you can much more easily and fast do testing of the development or run the code from the GitHub directly using the containers. And Don is blogging about the introduction and also the upcoming implications. So this is the part 1, and we can most likely see in the upcoming weeks then the next phases or next articles related on the same topics. But it is a really, really awesome way of isolating the problem of having specific node version dependencies and all of that using containers. And it's cool to see that this is finally catching on, because I guess even 4 to 5 years ago, we were having these discussions that should we push out the Dockers? Are the Dockers actually being used? What about container? How can we simplify this development process? So,
yeah.
Paul Pollack had a blog post.
Yes, so Paul wrote about the ability to have content targeting set up on dynamic groups, right? So typically you wanna have the ability, as you publish new content, you wanna have the ability to target it to a specific group to ensure that these people from these groups will see it. Now, oftentimes you will, like, depending on the scale of the company, you will not add everybody to a specific group because that might be too hard. So you might have dynamic groups where people are added based on criteria, right? And the cool thing is that you can use these dynamic groups to target the content in SharePoint.
Yep.
And Paul goes through all the different steps you need to take, like how do you set it up, how do you set up groups, and how you can use them to target the content to them.
Really very cool stuff. So here in the script, we can see that basically we have a specific group for intranet IT users or HR users. So based on the department definition, we can actually create this kind of a dynamic group. And then all of those dynamic groups are being available when we are filtering or doing audiences. Yeah. So luckily, the audience and personalization capabilities are much more agile nowadays in
than they were in 2007.
Exactly, that was pretty horrible.
Yeah.
So let's not talk about those historical times here. Now, Paolo Pialorsi had a new video related on managing content types in SharePoint Online with Microsoft Graph. So basically, there's a new set of APIs, relatively new set of APIs on the content types automation, and he talks about that those APIs which are available in Microsoft Graph. The cool thing again about the PSS Tech Bytes is that they're quite short, so you can easily catch up on, oh, I need to do X, Y, and Z. Awesome, Paolo has a video on it. Let me actually check it out.
They're called bytes for a reason then.
They are bytes for a reason. That is a good point. And then the last one, what we wanted to call out based on the interview with João Ferreira. And so just to show his blog, we talked about the fact that he has a website, Hands-on Tech, handsontech.net. And in here, we have basically the 4 different blogs, individual blogs. So as an example, we talked about the list, Microsoft lists and blocking, and he has a lot of information on that in his Microsoft list, hands-on lists. So thank you, João, on that one. It's really, really cool stuff. And a lot of content and useful content for sure. So, but cool. So what's happening this week? Anything interesting on your side?
Always. So for one, I'm working together with Alex Rentief from SPFX team on a command that will allow you to validate your SharePoint framework projects if they are set up the right way. And with that, we mean like if you have the right dependencies, if dependencies are registered correctly, the right versions, and so forth and so on, with the point that we want to empower everybody to be able to solve their own issues themselves, as opposed to have to submit an issue, wait for a triage and answer, only to get back to see after 3 or 4 days or how long it might take that it's something simple that they might have fixed themselves, right? So we want to basically give people a way to validate at least the basics by themselves, and then if they still experience an issue, they can always submit an issue and see if they can get additional help. So we're working on that. I hope that somewhere in the course of this week, I'll have a first working version, which I'll be able to share with Alex and everybody else, and basically see if that's the experience that we want to start with, and basically based on that, evolve it. So that will be one. I mentioned a while back already that I've been working with few colleagues of mine on seeing how we could improve developer experience of Teams apps for Angular devs. So we're coming to finishing points for our POC which we hope that we will be able to share soon too. If you use Angular to build Teams app, we'd love to hear from you about your current experience, as well as whatever we have in mind to share, to hear if that would move a needle for you or not. Let me see if there's anything else. There are a few internal things that I'm working on still, so that will probably come a few weeks more down the line. But in a big scheme of things, I guess that is it. What about you?
Feels like meeting, and then quadrillion messages in Teams asking, "Hey, have you been able to do this already?" So which is like, no, because I'm sitting in meetings. So
realities of life.
Yeah, I know. It's just this time of the year seems to be like it's certain times in the year and calendar when it's actually just a quadrillion amount of things happening and everybody's just pushing forward. So now that the winter breaks are basically done in Redmond and in Europe pretty much, so full speed ahead. And so
I think there is spring break this week in the US, or at least some parts of the US.
Depends. Yeah, it depends on the state. So,
okay.
So, but again, and of course, SharePoint Framework 1.15 preview is coming out actually this week. So we were planning to push it out already last week, but we'll push it out.
Also, with that, I know what I'll be doing. I will be adding support to let people upgrade their projects with SharePoint Framework 1.15 preview with CLI for M365.
Yes. So the 1.15 preview first will not yet have all of the features, but there will be some features and updates already available, and then adding more capabilities, especially in 1.15. Probably the biggest thing for the ecosystem, especially for those who are in SharePoint, is that you can override the list experience. So you can actually override the editing and viewing and reading experience in lists with SPFX components, and that's actually pretty highly requested capability for users.
Yeah, it's like that. Like we talked about it for a long time. So it's highly. I think it will be like highly liked feature to say it maybe away, right? Because like it opens up tons of new things people can build, right? So I'm curious how it will land, how people will receive it, and feedback that we'll get about it.
Yep, absolutely. It's really interesting. Of course, you can do overriding of some of the experiences with Microsoft Lists and JSON, but again, a different scenario. So JSON-based definition is for the end users and empowering individual people. The pro developer experience is again completely different. But we had such a huge amount of partners building, for example, list extensibility throughout the years in SharePoint. So having that capability enabled in SPFX in modern is super cool for sure. So
cool.
But cool. I guess that's it for this one. So thank you everybody for watching and listening. Please remember hashtag PnP Weekly in Twitter, so we know the awesome stuff what you're writing. If you remember to do that, we're always trying to catch, of course, regardless how you're doing that. We're trying to catch all of that relevant content as well. But thank you, Waldek, one more time. Thank you, João Ferreira, joining us this week, and we'll be back within a week.
Thank you, Vesa. Bye.
Bye-bye.